Going to be a new test. Ames is over. It's the past. We're never going to go back to the Ames standards. There's just no consensus all among educators at all and a desire to go back to Ames. So we're going to go on to some future set of standards. So the question is, how are we going to measure those standards? And one of the possibilities is the Park test. And what I had the ability to do, I sat on the board of Park. So my scientists were right in the rooms when they were developing those items. So we made absolutely sure that there were no climate change indoctrination questions on the Park test. We made absolutely sure that there was no defamation of the Founding Fathers included in those Park items. Through my position on that board, we were able to get a good, solid, conservative test developed. The other thing that I did is I moved that test from controlled by the federal government over into a nonprofit organization just like ACT, just like SAT. And I know we're going to have continuing fights there, but that test is now going to be completely under the control of the states, not the control of the federal government, through the board of directors that's going to be on it. It's going to be state people who are on the board. So this is what I was able to do from my being on the board of that organization. And this is a huge accomplishment. We had to stay right on our scientists, saying, okay, what is this development process doing? Watch out for these climate change questions. Watch out for all these issues on history. We want our Founding Fathers treated with respect. All these things, even though it's English language arts, they still are trying to slip these questions in. We have to constantly stay on the alert. So these are the things you can do when you have skills and when you have the abilities that I've accumulated over 30 years. We have a good record of accomplishment when it comes to defeating the federal government, defeating our intellectual opponents. And in Arizona, this school right here, Burk Basic School, the charter for this school right here was applied for and achieved under a law that I put in place. Now, my opponent's campaign manager has been out there on the internet criticizing my support for charter schools. Criticizing my support for charter schools. Criticizing my talking about the fact that we have the best homeschool laws in the nation. My opponent, we went through the records, she voted to allow the teachers union to take out union dues for political purposes without the written permission of the teachers. She was the only board member to do that. It's in the school board records.
That's a lie.
It is in the school board records. And so the question I have is, what is my opponent's true feelings about school choice? You know me, that I've bled for school choice over 20 years, bled for it. And the sacrifices I've had to make to achieve political victories and keep our school choice in place. We don't really know what my opponent's true position is on school choice.
Ms. Douglas, we'll give you 60 seconds.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I am my campaign manager, Mr. Huppenthal, and I have not been out writing against that. But let me explain to you this accusation he made about I supported the union. The law changed, and it was no longer legal for school districts to force union dues out of a teacher's paycheck. Our administration came to us and said, you know what, we can be ready to stop that and be in compliance with the law by January 1st of, I forget what year it was, I believe it was 2012. I could be mistaken on that. Our board said, no, that's all right. We're going to change this policy and we are going to allow them to continue taking dues out until May or June or the end of the school year or whatever it was. I was the only school board member that voted against it and said, no, we have a duty to be in compliance with the law as quickly as absolutely possible, and when our administration says it's January 1st, it needs to be January 1st. And the record says that I said we would be taking too long to extend until May or June. That's what the record says.
Mr. Huppenthal, we're going to change gears here up a little bit. We'll begin with you on this question. You came out and made comments through anonymous blogging that degraded those on welfare, for example. Do you regret doing this?
If you wanted to find the place out on the internet where liberal Democrats go to get ideas, the center place, the place they most frequently go in Arizona, if you were a liberal Arizona Democrat and you were interested in meeting and talking with other liberal Arizona Democrats, my estimate is the place you would go would be Blog for Arizona. And so I developed a habit of going out to Blog for Arizona and keeping an eye on those liberals. And I punched away. I punched away with facts. Let me give you one of the facts that I posted out there. Let me give you a couple of them. I said, from 2006 to currently, we've gone from 50,000 automobiles being stolen a year to 18,000. Think about that. 50,000 to 18,000. That's 32,000 automobiles not stolen. That's not something you read in the liberal media. And I told them on that blog, the liberals there, that this was directly correlated with the enforcement actions that Russell Pierce and others were able to make against illegal immigration. That strongly looked like by getting illegal immigration under control, that we were able to save the lives of 32,000 people. And let me give you another fact that I put out there. The murder rate in the city of Phoenix, it went from 240 down to 109 per year. That's 121 people not being murdered. 121 over that same time period. We went from DUI arrests that went down by half. And children, the fatality report at DHS, we went from 140 child deaths in Arizona down to less than 80. That's the equivalent of 3 Sandy Hook massacres. This was what was really happening with my blog posts. Facts, evidence. I kept them on the defensive time and time again. Piketty's book. Piketty is the new Marx. Everybody familiar with him? He's been on the Amazon bestseller list. Piketty says that France, since the Reagan Revolution, he says that France has grown just as much as the United States. Well, guess what? They haven't created one single hour of work for the working man in France since 1980. Piketty's statement is an absolute falsehood. Since 1980 in the United States, we've grown jobs 45%, and we've only lost 3% hours per work. That's what was going on those blog posts. I was beating the hell out of liberals.
And beating the heck out of people less fortunate sometimes, to call them things like lazy pigs. I want to return integrity to our State Department of Education. Under Mr. Huppenthal's guidance, when a teacher from Tucson, and I have his permission to tell this story and mention his name, Mr. Brad McQueen, he's written a book called Cult of Common Core. Anybody read it? Yes, a few of that. Probably one of the best books to explain what has happened. He opposed Common Core. He actually worked on the testing. He worked on some of the other things as a supplemental, or we give them stipends to work on different projects like that, teachers. Well, when he came out opposed to Common Core, he was blackballed by the Department of Education. And there are memos that go around that were published in the newspaper, the Arizona Daily Independent, that showed exactly the total lack of respect our Department of Education has for people who are not in line with the Common Core thinking. And disgracefully, one of the employees of our Department of Ed referred to this man, and please apologize, I apologize, as an F-tard. F*CKTARD, where that is the most disgraceful behavior I have ever seen. That should not be allowed. I can't believe that could happen, and I cannot abide the thought of that continuing in our Department of Ed. We should be an example for our children. We should set the example of how adults behave and how people should be relating to each other. And I'm sorry, this happens all too often in education, because once again, like I told you, they keep telling us what we must accept for our children rather than asking us what we expect for our children. And we need a system that has respect for the parents, the grandparents, and the taxpayers to whom it belongs.
Let's talk about the teacher who was a part of my team. And we respected him as a part of the team. But guess what? He created an enormous problem. We put him in there with an objective, to review those items. We wanted conservatives in there. I'm a conservative. I love the fact that he was conservative in there. But guess what? He created a problem. they had an item in there that referred to our Native Americans as Indians. This was a fight that we didn't need to fight, but he fought it. He demanded that Native Americans be referred to as Indians. Native Americans find that enormously insulting. They do. They do. And but it is a fight that is off the main path of what we want to do, of what we were trying to achieve. It was a fight that I didn't want to have happen. It created a lot of disturbance in the whole range. Plus, he was on a specific committee in terms of how he was doing item review. He was crossing off of that committee onto another committee. So ladies and gentlemen, part of what we do, we all can get in these kind of disagreements. Let me tell you, I know. I've been in enough fights in my career that I wish I had avoided. But it created quite a few problems. So I have absolute respect for him. I have absolute respect for his values. And I've gone across this state and talked to thousands of people who are opposed to Common Core. And I'm listening to them. I'm listening to them. I've got to lead us out of this thing. I've got to find where we're going to go, which is a better place. Our standards are a huge, monstrous thing. It's like a mountain that you're going to have to reshape and reform. There's an enormous amount of work to be done. I need to know exactly how to do it to have the best possible outcome. And that's what I've been doing, shaping these ideas. The same way we got ready for the ethnic studies battle. I wanted to be absolutely confident that when I walked into that courtroom that I would mop the deck with my opponents. I didn't want there to be a single chance that I could lose that battle because there was so much at stake. When I went down to the Tucson School District, they had a poster of Che Guevara up on the wall. I was ready for that fight because of my parents. I said, how can you have him on the wall? He shot 14,000 Cubans in the back of the head for no other reason than their speech rights. Intolerable. They were declaring Benjamin Franklin a racist. He's a huge civics rights hero when you think of all the work he did on slavery. These are battles we can't afford to lose, ladies and gentlemen, and I get ready for them with incredible depth and seriousness. Thank you.
Ms. Douglas, this question is for you. We're going to move into some of the questions that have been submitted by the audience. We're going to move through as many as possible here, and we'll give each candidate 2 minutes each. First question, Ms. Douglas. Have you raised money for pro-abortion candidates or for candidates who support amnesty for illegal aliens? In addition, there's also an accusation that's been made that you supported Democrats and individuals that supported Common Core. Will you address those allegations?
Yes, I will gladly address those allegations. I have not raised any money for Democrats. I have not raised money for pro-abortion candidates. I have not given money to pro-abortion candidates, nor would I. When I was running for the city of Glendale, I was running for the Glendale City Council at the time. Obviously, we lived in Glendale, and it was a passion of mine because of how that city was so poorly being run. It was on the verge of bankruptcy. One of the issues that I campaigned on very clearly was that that Glendale needed to stop fighting the Tohono O'odham casino, and I was very. We were losing money. We lost lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, and the nation had come to the school board. We sat down and talked with them. I met many of the leaders of the nation. During that campaign, I was invited to a nonpartisan event to discuss my views and share them, because I believe that Glendale did have to stop that lawsuit. The taxpayers were now paying for the Tohono O'odham's legal fees. So I went to that lawsuit. I did not advocate, or I went to that event. I did not advocate for anyone to give any money to any Democrat candidate. I did not give any money to any Democrat candidate. The only thing that we shared in common was a belief that Glendale had to get back on the right track and had to stop wasting taxpayer money on an issue that was taking them down the wrong course.
Mr. Huppenthal?
What's out there, and it's out there in evidence, Manuel Cruz, a pro-abortion, endorsed by Planned Parenthood, a pro-amnesty candidate, did a joint fundraiser with my opponent. The pictures are out there. She's in the joint fundraiser. He was so proud of his partnership with my opponent that he had a handshake with her, featured front page on his website. He was running against a conservative Republican. That's the point we make. We don't know, you know my track record, what I've bled for. 20-year, 100% pro-life voting record. Not an easy thing to do when you're in a pro-choice legislative district. I had to work hard to maintain a conservative majority for a pro-life legislature. Worked really hard, unbelievably hard, to be able to win in that legislative district. You know this about me. You know about my track record on charter schools. I had to bleed to make sure that we could continuously expand, be #1 in the nation in school choice. Homeschooling. They brag about our homeschool laws in Arizona. The best homeschool laws in the nation. If you're a homeschool parent in Arizona, you can't be harassed by government. Plain and simple. Our homeschool parents love my laws that I created. You know, for 20 years, the fight that I've been fighting. And you know the depth that I take in doing research and get ready for fights. I win fight after fight after fight. I'm going to win this Common Core fight. I've already blocked Common Core science standards because of the climate change issues. I've already blocked Common Core literature because of the pornography involved. I've already blocked Common Core history by bringing out our own initiative, Excellence in Civic Engagement. We are now going to deal with the English language arts and the math standards. And we are going to deal with them in a way that moves Arizona to the best set of standards in the nation by grinding it out and bringing in the very best experts. I've spent hours on the phone talking to Zev Werman, talking to Sandra Stotsky, talking to Terrence Moore from Hillsdale. I've read his book twice. We're ready for this fight. It's going to be a successful fight.
Mr. Huppenthal, this question is for you. Why are charter schools in Arizona profitable while public schools are constantly in need of more money?
Well, that's a softie. The charter schools have the ability to be focused and to be well organized. Not all of our charter schools are profitable. We have failure. We allow failure in the charter school system. We don't allow failure in the district school system. We're perpetually bailing out school districts across the state. Let's take it for example, right down in Arizona, or down in Tucson. Tucson Unified School District, sitting there, right next to Vail. They're spending $60,000 more per classroom. $60,000 more per classroom. If there was ever a living example of a school district where money doesn't count, a C district right next to our best district in the state, and we are peeling them alive, skinning them alive. We're peeling out thousands of students out of that school district. They are shrinking because of school choice. And the school choice, the charter schools down there, they are schools like Burk Basic School here, like Legacy Academy, like Benjamin Franklin, who treasure the Constitution, who treasure the Declaration of Independence, who teach a robust history. This is my belief. I've fashioned a system over the last 20 years as the architect of our education system that is completely decentralized. Our local school boards, our local school charter schools are in complete control of their curriculum, their textbook selection. So all of this stuff out there, and what we're finding is parents crave this. They want to have pride in their country. They want their students to be proud of where they live. This is the environment that I've created with my skill set. I'm asking for you to re-elect me, to have confidence in my ability to win these battles. Thank you.
Ms. Douglas, same question.
Okay, and if I recall, the question is, why are charter schools
In Arizona profitable while public schools are constantly in need of more money?
One of the things we have to do, and I discussed very often with our superintendent when I was on the school board, and we heard this frequently from your traditional district public schools, that they didn't think the competition with charter schools was fair. Well, what we need to do, in my opinion, is we need to take the reins off the traditional public schools and not tighten the reins on the charter schools. Now, unfortunately, with Common Core, which is what is in our state, it has not been removed. There's not been any battle fought over it. Everybody has been complacently going along until the Common Core moms found out about it. Even though we're going to find out, I believe, that our charter schools are not going to be able to keep up with the incessant demands of spending that are going to be mandated by this endless program. When I was on the Peoria School Board, when I was first elected to it, there's a report called the Auditor General's Report. It comes out every year for every single school district, and it gives you information about teacher salaries and the way the money is spent within the district. When I came on our school board, our dollars to the classroom were dropping, and that we didn't have as much of a dollar going into the classroom. Over time, we were able to turn that around, doing things like, we had an incredible number of, I can't think, there were teachers assigned out of the classroom. We had a name for them, it escapes me right this minute. But we had so many teachers who spent their day having nothing to do with children. The board said, that's crazy. Let's get those teachers back in the classroom in front of kids where teachers belong. That's a way to get money back in the classroom. Another thing we did was we found an employee benefit program that did nothing to change the quality and level of benefits that our employees received, but saved the taxpayers about $2 million a year. You need to have a school board that's looking to do things like that. You need to have school boards that want to utilize their money appropriately and not just keep asking for more.
The one thing I love is numbers, because numbers to me tell stories about people. And guess what? We went out and we looked up the records on my opponent's school district. And we know those numbers exactly. Over the time period that she was on that school board, the percentage of dollars that went into the classroom dropped by 9%. And those are absolute numbers that are searchable. You can go out there and you can find those numbers. So that's the case there. The story you just heard is a false story. That in fact the percentage of spending in the classroom didn't go up. We know because we do research on these kind of things and we keep track of these things. So these are the issues. Knowing your data exactly, getting ready for battle, being confident in what you're doing. We do this all the time. We fight battles in every arena. Let me give you an example. On the waiver fight with the federal government, I literally reached inside the federal regulatory agency, went inside what they call Institute of Education Sciences, because I knew the research that these people had done. And I had them go down the hallway and beat up the regulatory people so that we could back them off. Literally, because I knew the research studies they had done did not back up the pressures that they were trying to put out on us as a state. This is what you have to know. This is the kind of knowledge you have to be a sophisticated negotiator against the federal government. Thank you.
Ms. Douglas, a question from the audience. We have not had local control in over 50 years because teachers' unions have picked who was elected to the school board. What will you do to restore parental control to school boards and not teachers' unions?
Ladies and gentlemen, that's in your hands. That is not something that I believe gets decreed from Jefferson Avenue. You have, every 2 years, we have school board elections. You need to know who those candidates are. You need to find out who's running, who's backing them, who's giving them money, and then you need to get out and campaign for your candidates. When we were on the Peoria School Board, when I was on the Peoria School Board, they tried to have the union mandate meet and confer. That's a pretty name for collective bargaining that they now use to try to fool us. We change names a lot in education, or we give them pretty names. But that's a local issue, and you need to know your people. You need to vet them, you need to find out what their background is, and you need to find out who's funding their campaigns. And you surely, in your communities, you have enough people that if you make that effort, you can get the people you want elected to your school board. And that's one of the most important duties, I believe, you have for your children.
When I was in the state senate, I took the war directly to the teachers union. I went over there, I said, look, it takes 180 days. 180 days to dismiss a non-performing teacher. You need to have some pride in yourself and shorten this down. This is intolerable that we allow very poor performing teachers to stay on. You probably heard about the lawsuits that are going on in California right now on this issue. I put through in the legislature in 1996 a law that shortened that 180 days down to 90 days. This is a huge victory. In California, they went the opposite way. They went to 5 years. 5 years. They had what they call rubber rooms. Teachers would show up in the rubber room and read library books, play cards, sleep, and collect a paycheck while school districts were trying to dismiss them. I did the exact opposite. And I didn't reissue a press release. I kept right on working, folks. These are the kind of accomplishments that I've been able to tick up over and over again. Think about that. While California and New York were going out to years to get rid of a non-performing teacher, I shrunk that down to 90 days, and that created the momentum. We were later able to get it down to 60 days, which I also supported. That's all it takes in Arizona to dismiss a non-performing teacher is 60 days. These are the kind of accomplishments that I've racked up over the last 20 years, one after another. Never a press release. And I'm counting on you all to think deeply about what you're hearing tonight. I'm a workhorse. I don't go out and give fancy speeches. I can't use that soaring rhetoric to get people all charged up. I just perform for you. Creating school choices, decentralizing power, creating local control of curriculum. That's what I do, and I'm extremely effective at it. Thank you.
Mr. Huppenthal, this question's for you. If the parents in Tucson were to support ethnic studies and bilingual education, why, as a conservative, would you not support local autonomy and allow said programs? And as you address that, if you talk a little bit about English-only education.
I'm the ultimate local control elected official, but there are limits even for me. You have a responsibility not to trash the minds of young children. There are bounds. So it's called the white lines. Staying between the white lines. And TUSD went way outside of those white lines. They were teaching students to hate America. They were teaching a history which was totally opposite of the facts. Describing Benjamin Franklin as a racist. Anybody who knows his history knows that he belongs in the pantheon of civil rights heroes. Literally right in front of him. He freed his own slaves. He gave them responsibilities of power in his position out of his own pocket. As a businessman, he paid for the very first schools for African Americans in this country. What they were teaching those kids about our founding fathers was so hateful, it is way outside the bounds. There's no definition of local control in which I would ever allow that kind of thing. I was so glad to take that case to them. Their curriculum was so messed up, it was so disgusting what was going on there. It was clearly beyond the bounds of anything that is tolerable from a local control standpoint. We wanted to have this active debate. I defeated them in state court, I defeated them in federal court, and we're continuing. This battle will never end. These forces are there continuously, and we are still defeating them. Thank you.
See, no matter what the circumstances are, there's always something you can find to agree on. I am a huge proponent of local control. I think you understand that. But when our schools are teaching our children to hate America or to see her as an adversary, when this is a country that has spread more freedom, more prosperity, has had more blessings than any other nation because we were founded under God, that's something that we have to make sure that is conveyed to our children. And that wasn't happening down in Tucson. But it's also not happening in our classrooms. The AP, David Coleman, who's the architect of Common Core and has brought that debacle on us, is now over at the College Board and has rewritten the AP program, the Advanced Placement Program in American history. And once again, we're going to continue teaching our children that their founding fathers were not the great men that we all know them to be, and that we understood, that we were taught when we were in school. This has to stop, and a part of this comes from our colleges of education, because what happens is teachers are taught all too often to teach, and I don't mean to impugn teachers because we have many wonderful ones who love their subject matter. But what's going on in our universities is that they are not teaching our prospective teachers the content knowledge they need to convey these thoughts, these beliefs, and the foundation that our children need to be not only knowledgeable, but free governing Americans. You've seen it, Howard Zinn's book was referenced, that's an absolutely awful history book. We can't allow this to continue. When my daughter was in school, and she was in high school, I didn't look for the the education math teacher. I looked for the math major, the mathematician who wanted to be in the classroom. We need historians who want to be in the classroom. Our colleges of education should be the hardest schools to get in a university, not the easiest, and that's where a lot of the problem lays also.
Ms. Douglas, this question is for you as well. Two-part question from the audience here. Since students have scored higher using Common Core standards, and since our old Arizona standards were rated lower by the Fordham Institute specifically, what standards would you have students use? And as you address that, would you also talk about how you'll deal with teachers that seem to be rather enthused by the Common Core standards?
Well, the problem with the Common Core standards is it's one size fits all, and it has to be everywhere in every school, and it's controlled by the federal government. So it has to be removed, in my opinion, because it's unconstitutional. That doesn't mean we can't have equally high standards. That's kind of a misnomer with the Fordham Foundation. If I remember correctly, our English language, our arts, and our math standards were rated a B by the Fordham Foundation, and they were recognized by Dr. Sandra Stotsky, one of the preeminent standards experts in America, as among the best in the nation. And Common Core was rated, I believe, a B+, I can't remember which one, and an A-. So a very minimal difference, and of course the Fordham Foundation was given $1.6 million to come up with that rating on the Common Core standards by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, but that, I'm sure that's just a fluke. Anyway, our standards, we could go back to our own standards. Those of you who were here Saturday night heard from Dr. Stotsky. She has standards in place that are free and will be totally under the control of a local state who chooses to use them, or a local district that chooses to use them. So why are we going to invest, or actually have taken from us, hundreds of millions of dollars in new funding for education to get a change that's virtually non-existent? We just heard yesterday our letter grades were released by the State Department of Education. Under the Ames test and Common Core standards, which haven't been in place long enough, supposedly education is increasing in Arizona. We have more schools that are going up and fewer schools on the lower end, but yet we've allowed them to totally rip apart our education system and put it under the control of people way too far away in Washington, D.C. That makes no sense to me. We can do that here in Arizona. We had the best education system. America had the best education system in the world until we allowed progressives to get in there and rip it apart. And this is just another step under elimination.
Mr. Huppenthal.
The situation that we're faced with is complicated. It's not as simple as being able to go in and say, I'm going to get rid of these standards on the first day of office by signing something. No more than you could say, I'm going to get rid of Alma School Road on the first day by, what would you do, erase it off the map? It is a complex situation. Some of the standards that have been put in place by the state board appear to be excellent standards. Standards that conservatives have fought for 20 years. Those are things that we're going to probably want to keep. We're going to want to keep phonics and phonemic awareness, letter identification, reading by kindergarten. That's solid. Knowing your multiplication facts by 3rd grade. Knowing double-digit multiplication and long division by 5th grade. Starting in on your algebra and getting your basic algebra stuff in place by the 6th grade. Being able to construct a sentence, a paragraph, and a research paper. We as conservatives have fought for this for 20 years. There's a number of victories in here. But we want to go through there with our best education leaders helping to guide us in a series of hearings. Now the state board had 8 consecutive hearings. But guess what? People don't come to hearings until they feel the impact on themselves. Now is the time for hearings. The time is right for us to start this process and grind through this and make sure that you are all comfortable with our math and English language arts standards. Those standards are no way, shape, or form perfect. Have our academic results gone up under them? Absolutely they did. But guess what? My reading of the research is that standards are a relatively small part of the whole equation. I read a lot of research, and I want to have standards that you all are comfortable with, standards that you are proud of, standards that reflect the very best traditions in American education, and we're going to get there. And we're going to get there with guidance from our great education experts. We're going to keep those hearings going. The plan is 8 consecutive ones to address every single comment, to think about every single comment. This is what I do to make things come out in a better place. Not some slipshod, half-dash process like they used in Indiana that is a mess. They will be a decade recovering from that disaster. When we're done with our consecutive hearings, we're going to come out this with a consensus in Arizona. This is a great set of standards we can move forward with, and we will have completely banished Common Core Science, Common Core History, Common Core Literature. These will be Arizona standards. That stuff will be gone. Thank you.
This is going to be the last question here, and then we're going to move into closing statements. Mr. Huppenthal, there's at least 5 questions here that revolve around where you stand on the pro-life issue, so I'm going to go ahead and ask it, because apparently there are some people that are concerned about where you stand. Are you pro-life, and how does that square with allowing Common Core Planned Parenthood sex education in the classrooms?
I have a 20-year, 100% pro-life voting record, pro-family voting record in the state legislature. When defining marriage as one man and one woman came out of the legislature, it came out because I was there that night to fight the battle on the floor of the Senate. The microphone was handed to me. Order completely broke down in the Senate. I had to conduct 45 consecutive minutes of motions. It was my skills, the skills that I'm talking about here tonight, that enabled that to get out to the ballot and be approved. 100% pro-life voting record, 100% pro-family voting record. As to whether there are standards in place that do the things that were just described, I have not seen any standard like that in the college and career ready math or English language arts standards. I haven't seen anything like that whatsoever. I would never allow a standard like that to go into place in Arizona. Thank you.
Ms. Douglas.
I'm absolutely pro-life. When I started on the board a few years in, I had the honor of being invited by Arizona Right to Life to serve on an education panel and speak to them about how these issues integrate into education. There absolutely are sex ed standards that have been written. They're called, and the total name escapes me, National Sexual, it's got a really something standards, I forget, but they were written with the help of Planned Parenthood. And don't doubt for a minute that they won't be in our classrooms. We already know from Tempe Union High School District that they are making inroads in bringing those in to hurt our children, to hurt their moral values. You know, I told you that many years ago we moved here from New Jersey to raise and educate our daughter. Never looked back, never regretted that decision. But one of the reasons we made that decision, because people say, how could you do that? They spend so much money on education in New Jersey. Even 20 years ago, 26 years ago, they spent a lot of money on education in New Jersey. And why would you come to Arizona? Well, first of all, I'm here to say my daughter got an excellent education in Arizona, and we are very glad we came here. But one of the reasons we left, if I'm not mistaken, New Jersey was the first state to adopt Heather Has Two Mommies for use in the classroom. You know what? If a school system harms your child's or delays your child's academic achievement, you can always get a tutor, you can tutor them yourself. There are zillions of ways to bring your child up to speed academically. But when the people in the school district want to harm their moral values and work against what you're working for in the home to raise your child, that cannot be abided and that must be stopped. And we cannot allow that to continue in our
schools. You'll have the last word, Ms. Douglas.
Not only did I have a 20-year, 100% pro-life voting record, but twice my election victory in very difficult circumstances restored a pro-life majority to the state Senate. In 1992, when I got elected, they had a pro-abortion majority. My election made it a pro-life majority. In 2006, when Slade Mead brought a pro-abortion majority to the legislature, I was picked. I got the call to take him out. An incredibly difficult election. Huge personal sacrifice. Twice, I restored a pro-life, pro-family majority to the state Senate. And we were able to make huge gains by having that pro-life, pro-family majority. Thank you.
Ms. Douglas, an opportunity for rebuttal?
Yeah, I thought we were done doing the rebuttals back and forth, but I don't.
Well, this is just too much fun.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm having fun. And obviously, that's an issue we agree on. Protecting the sanctity of life is what we are called to do as human beings, and we must do that. But we must make sure that our children are protected from these types of things like Planned Parenthood, sex education, that just want to break down the moral fiber, break down the family. That can't be happening from within the system that we entrust our children to.
Thank you both. Let's move right to closing statements, and we'll begin with Mr. Huppenthal.
I'm a known product at the state level. You've experienced me over and over again for 20 years. The deciding vote to bring charter schools to Arizona. Developing a 15-year charter law instead of a 10-year charter law. Allowing them to go in for their charter renewals at 10 years instead of having to wait till the end. Allowing charter schools to get an automatic new school without having to go through the whole bureaucratic process. It was called replication. That was my design. Over and over again, I was able to create environments that created the best possible school choice environment for Arizona. And it wasn't just among our charter schools. Our district schools, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 150,000 to 200,000 students that are making a school choice in a district school system. It's an amazing environment for a parent who's a lower middle class, poverty parent, who was not trapped the way they're trapped in other states. It's incredible. The same thing with homeschooling. To be able to bring through laws that the Homeschool Association calls the best homeschool laws in the nation. Over and over again, I delivered. And it wasn't just in the area of education, it was all over the place. I was the 16th in deciding vote to bring concealed carry gun rights to Arizona. I was the deciding vote to get Senate Bill 1070 passed, employer verification passed. These elements, which enabled Arizona to be on an incredible conservative roll relative to other states, I was key in every one of those battles. And now we have another battle, a very complex battle, one that could damage our education system. And you know, there was a senator here, I had a lot of battles with him, Rich Crandall. He said Huppenthal has to study something for 5 years before he can make a decision. Well, I don't need to study things for 5 years, but I need to study it long enough so I can have a profound knowledge that I'm going to take Arizona to a better place. And we have an incredibly complex challenge here. And I've done my studying. I've done my due diligence. I'm now ready to act. I'm asking for your confidence. I'm asking for your knowledge that how I've delivered for you over and over again in the past. I'm asking you to compare my track record of win after win after win after win with anybody else in the field and what their track record has been in producing these kind of victories. I'm asking for your support, I'm asking for your vote, and thank you for your past support. Whatever happens, it's going to be a great journey, and we trust in God as always. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we know how to educate our children. We were the best in the world at it for 200 years or more. We brought, as I said before, more freedom, more prosperity, saved more lives around the world than any other country ever. We're now being sold a bill of goods. With all due respect to my opponent, it's only a battle he wants to fight now that his political career is being threatened. We've not heard for 3.5 years one word opposing Common Core. We've heard plenty. We've heard that Common Core it's a grassroots effort. We know it's not. It's internationally benchmarked. No, it's not. There's no proof of it. We're told it's higher standards. Absolutely, it is not. What we do know is it's a federal mandate. What we also know is the school choice that we heard spoken about just a moment ago will be destroyed under the Common Core standards. Charter schools have to do exactly the same thing as traditional district schools now, and if private schools want their children to go to college, they will be forced into Common Core, as will the homeschoolers. But the thing I find most offensive about Common Core is this data collection that they will do on our children. And you know, I don't stand up and I don't make promises as a candidate that I can't keep. I don't say I'm going to promise to raise the graduation rate 10 points or the reading rate this point, because there's a lot of issues involved in that. But when my opponent took office, he was sent to communist China to bring back ideas for here in Arizona on how they educate our children. Ladies and gentlemen, I will make you one promise. When I'm your superintendent of public instruction, I will not go to a communist country to see how they educate their children, because I don't care. We are America, we are the land of the free and the home of the great, and that's the heritage. That is what our children deserve to know and love about this country, and that's what I do promise to fight for you and for your children. Thank you. God bless you all. Pray for our nation, please.
Let's give both John Huppenthal and Diane Douglas a hand. Great job. We hope that you both will stick around. I know we've got a lot of folks here that would like to mingle, talk with you if possible, so we hope that you'll hang around in the foyer. Thank you both so much for participating. Thank you. Folks, before you go...
that to introduce new evidence in the closing statement.
Hold on, John. John, if I'm going to give you 60 seconds...
Then she gets 60 seconds too.
That's fair enough.
To introduce new evidence in the closing seconds here, we have an obligation to be as knowledgeable as we can when we guide systems. I did have an opportunity to go over to China, and I visited schools there. I was studying this intently. We absolutely need to be knowledgeable at all levels. And I went back and forth before I took that trip. I've turned down 17 Fiesta Bowls, 2 Super Bowls, a World Series. My track record of accepting lobbyist meals is 0 per year. But I went over there because I wanted to become more profoundly knowledgeable about what our potential competitors might be doing. That's our obligation, is to become knowledgeable, not to seclude ourselves off in the world. My track record as a conservative is unparalleled in the history of Arizona. I'm proud of that record, and it's undiminished by the fact that I would go out and become more knowledgeable about a major competitor of ours who's growing at 11% a year. Thank you.
I will just say to conclude that I think taking a trip to communist China, sponsored by one of the publishing companies that stands to make a fortune off of Common Core, speaks for itself. With that, I'll say good night. God bless you all.
I want to leave you with just some final thoughts. Thank you both again. We want to invite you to visit freedomfires.com. That's freedomfires.com to see some of the things that we're doing. I just want to share with you before you do head out just one experience that I had. Hopefully that will provide some additional motivation. I was sitting down with my daughter last night. I have 6 children, and my youngest is 5. 5 boys, and we finally got our girl. And I was sitting at the dinner table with her. She was sitting right next to me, and she looked up at me. It was just great. She says, "Dad, so how's the fight for freedom going?" It was great. I said, "Well, it's going just fine." And she says, "Well, how are those people doing that are supposed to be helping you out?" I said, "It's a team effort. We're making this happen together." So I want to thank you for coming out here every week, making this happen together. Invite your friends and family next week. Christine Jones will be here among others. We got a great program scheduled for next week. Good night, folks. We'll see you.